What's going on, guys? This is Tradig Insight. Just wanted to talk about the election result, how I positioned myself going into the election with my investments, what my plan was, what my plan still is, and you might be surprised by it. So, nothing scripted here. I'm just going to kind of be jumping around. So if I talk a little too much on one topic and then circle around, sorry about that. But anyway, so going into the election, and let's start prior to that. So prior to that, I saw a big opportunity in Sofi stock. I don't know if any of you have ever used Sofi, but it's basically an app where you can do your direct deposit, your checking, your savings. They do personal loans, home loans, student loans. They have an invest platform where you can move money you can get direct deposit, you can move it right into your 4+% savings account. You can move that right into your invest account on the same app, and buy whatever stock under the sun. And they've got a lot of products, and they've developed their ability to make money significantly over the last few years. And they've been very adaptable, and they have a great CEO. Anyway, from a technical analysis perspective alone, I saw an opportunity for Sofi to make a series of jumps. And there were, from technical analysis, you're drawing lines on a chart, and you're doing, Fibonacci's and math as well. But it's all scenarios, right? The stock price is going to move based on momentum and fundamentals, and then it's going to respect those trend lines and that technical analysis to a degree. But the momentum and fundamentals are going to dictate really what happens. But in the absence of any change to fundamentals, if you have momentum moving in one direction, you will respect the technical analysis. Anyway, so I saw the opportunity in Sofi stock. So I used a lot of capital and made a pretty large bet with leaps. So leaps, it's like a low risk option because it expires in a year or 2 years. So I said, you know what, I'll pay you a certain fee so that I have the right to buy the stock at a certain price a year or two from now, right? So when you're doing leaps, I might be buying for the right to buy the stock at, so if Sofi stock was $7 or $8, I might buy the right to buy it at $4 or $5, and I might pay, $2 or $3 for that right. So my cost basis, if Sofi stock was trading at $7, if it wasn't very volatile at the time, my cost basis might have been $7.50 for the year 2026, right, when the contract would reach expiration date. So I effectively was able to double down and buy even more than if I were buying shares, right? I was able to buy like 100% more. Anyway, so I started with that bet because there was the absence of anything fundamental going on other than Sofi's business was improving, and there wasn't much going on in the summertime. So I made that bet, kind of scaled out of it a little bit, and de-risked going as we hit those technical areas. As we hit the first resistance, de-risked significantly. As we hit the second resistance, de-risked significantly. Going into the election, I said, you know what? Depending on how it goes, it's totally going to dictate Sofi's success, right? And it's either going to give them a trampoline to where they can really jump and the business can really accelerate, or it's going to cause new headwinds, which could prolong the company's success by years and give another player room to kind of jump in and knock them off that top innovative spot, right? They've invested so much in marketing, and they do have an edge. If you've really been studying the company and you're familiar with all the different companies that you can do your investments on and your banking on, if you've ever used the Sofi app, you know that it's the best experience right now. And I know that, right? I've used like every brokerage under the sun, used a whole bunch of different crypto exchanges. I was heavy in crypto previously. I've traded futures. I've done all kinds of stuff. And, Sofi to me is the best experience. And as long as they continue to improve that, I think they'll maintain their competitive edge, right? And so already I'm getting significantly off track, but I just kind of wanted to start with my core investment prior to the election and kind of where my head was at. So I was de-risking, SoFi goes up and up and up. I'm in at like $6.50, $6, $7. I've flipped it a few times as it's bounced around. And then boom, we're at like $11 pre-election or going into the election night. And I'd been saying all along, I said, and I had told family members, I said, if the election goes the way it ended up going, I will be all in on Bitcoin, small and mid cap stocks, SoFi, and then a couple of the large caps, depending on who stands to benefit the most and whose chart looks the best from a technical analysis perspective, right? So that obviously excludes Netflix. Netflix had already seen a big run up after earnings. Facebook had dropped going into the election by like $50, so obviously they were a good option. And in my opinion, Facebook stands to 3 or 4x over the next 10 years from current price if they continue to execute, which I think they will. And so that was a great option. Tesla, because Elon Musk was obviously involved in the campaign, that was a very clear one. Pltr had a ton of momentum after earnings, and being a speculative play, it was ripe for continuation, right? So those were really the big ones for me. And it ended up being a really good play. So as the betting odds started progressing on election night, I said, geez, man, I wish I was on Robinhood where I could have 24/7 trading. I'd already be in everything I wanted to be in. But instead, I had to stay up late watching the election. And then at 4 a.m. when I could trade on the Webull app, where, I kept most of my money there for a while, I was all in, right like that at 4 a.m., ready to go. Because I knew what was going to come. And so all in on Bitcoin, all in on SoFi stock, very heavily still, right? Because with the election going the way it went, there you go. That's what SoFi needed, right? And then relatively heavy positions in Amazon, Facebook, Tesla, Pltr, right? And then some small and mid cap index, right? Just an ETF. And then a couple other little names sprinkled in that I felt like were beaten down. One of them being Elf Beauty, which ended up jumping like 20% on decent earnings, and may continue to see more continuation. But so I had picked the winners, right? And now I'm caught up in the euphoria, like everyone else, right? And, it was an ideal scenario. Everything played out great, right? And getting emotional, getting caught up in the feel-good feelings of all the investments going up. Well, it's time to get back to reality, and the reality is it won't go on forever, right? It's not going to go on forever. And the moment you want to tell somebody about an investment, like, oh man, check this out, this is great, or you want to brag about it, or you start feeling really good about it, so you stop thinking about when to sell, and you just keep thinking, man, this is great. Yeah, you should probably sell, or you should at least be planning to sell, right? But it should never get to that point. You should never lose your head. You should always be apathetic towards trading, right? You should not let it get you emotional. The most successful traders I've ever met in my life, and one guy comes to mind, and is not emotional at all with really anything, right? But especially with trading, right? I love the guy. Awesome guy. But that's how you got to be with trading, right? And so you keep your emotions out of it, and you always go into every trading day with a plan. Especially if you're working a job. If you can't sit there and actively, hedge risk or get in and out of a position or whatever, which would be ideal if you could do that, right? But if you're working a full-time job, then really you got to know what are the economic events going into every day, okay? What are the scenarios? What are the scenarios for price movement based on the charts? Let's say something good happens, something good gets announced. Where's my next sell point? Where is price going to go before it stops and then falls back down. Because I'd like to sell it right up there where it's going to stop. And you can actually predict these things based on your technical analysis, right? And people want to knock technical analysis, but it's because they don't understand how dynamic it is. Because you can have technical analysis where the most likely scenario is right here at point A, going into the trading day or going into the week, but then as more volume gets traded at a certain price, or as price action continues to evolve, well, here comes scenario B, here comes scenario C. So there's always scenarios that are being introduced where you have to take them into account, right? But getting off the technical analysis and back onto the meat of the video, right? Well, it's time to start scaling out of certain positions. Tesla and Pltr are way overvalued, right? Way overvalued. And there's nothing wrong with holding them long term. But if you're an active investor like me, where you really like bouncing around and moving to what you think the next opportunity is going to be and kind of being ahead of the crowd, it's time to get out of Tesla. It's time to get out of Pltr. And I'm not going to lie, I was late to those parties anyway because I didn't want to be in Tesla going into election night knowing that if it went the other way, Tesla would get slaughtered, right? I didn't want to be betting with leverage on call contracts on something like Sofi going into election night, knowing that if it went the other way, they'd get slaughtered, right? So there's risk management, right? But now it went our way. I bought in at 4 a.m. as soon as I could, right? And was all in, like I said it would be. But now it's time to take things off the table. So I'm going to be selling Tesla and Pltr 4 a.m. Monday morning, right? I'm going to be selling, I believe we can trade Monday morning, whatever the next time I can trade is. I think it's 4 a.m. Monday morning. I'm going to be doing the charting on Bitcoin because I haven't done it yet, but Bitcoin's now 80 some thousand, right? So it's time to revisit the chart on Bitcoin and see what the most likely scenario is. When is it time to start taking some profit, or when is it time to just totally sell it all, right? I'll probably keep a little bit in it until it goes 100 plus, but I'm not gonna lie, I haven't looked at the chart since determining what the price would be at breakout and what needed to happen for the breakout. And so it's broken out, and now it's time to start thinking about how long is that gonna happen? How long is that rally gonna be? Is it gonna be a couple days, a week? Given that it's been this long since a rally of this magnitude for Bitcoin, it's probably not just going to be a couple more days, but there's going to be bumps along the way, and that's when the technical analysis comes into play. Bitcoin went from 67,000 and it goes up to 87,000. You don't think it's going to bounce down and drop, $4,000 off of 87,000? I'm not saying that's the line or the point where I'm going to sell. I need to look at the charts, but I'm just saying, these are things that, based on the charting, you can have a plan. And if you have a plan and you're taking profit, you can never be upset, right? You never go break taking a profit, and you never get mad when you have a plan, right? And it helps keep your emotions out of it. So selling Tesla, selling Pltr, scaling down on Amazon. So Amazon, I really wanted it to hit 214. It didn't quite hit 214. So really I should have sold, because I was pretty heavy on Amazon too. I was able to get that relatively cheap at 4 a.m. the day after the election. So, really wanted to sell that at 214. Didn't quite get there, right? So that one I'm going to have to reevaluate and see, should I sell here? I may sell 20% of it and then hold out for 214 if it'll get there. And if it keeps breaking down, reevaluate, right? Things are dynamic, but you think it's going to a certain price based on the technical analysis, but as price action evolves, more scenarios get added, right? So Amazon is a question mark. Meta is still a question mark. I like the amount of money I have on Meta. I believe that Meta, based on the math, stands to likely 4x and become $2,200 a share in 10 years, right? I don't mind that. For a large cap holding, that's great. I think Amazon and Facebook are both relatively low risk at the current price. I wouldn't mind holding them long term, right? And I think Amazon stands to gain a lot from the whole tariff situation. And I haven't really heard anybody talk about that, but I think they do stand to gain from that. And even if there wasn't the tariff situation, I think Amazon would still have a lot to gain, just given the election results. So Facebook and Amazon, I might sell at a technical analysis sell point, but then look for re-entry, right? Because I actually want to be in those long term. Same for Bitcoin, as long as it hasn't gotten to some crazy valuation. Effectively, Bitcoin has broken out, right? And it's blue skies, baby. But we still can draw trend lines, and we still can do Fibonacci's, and we can see and math and see, you know, what are the key levels that are going to be coming up? Where would I like to sell some and maybe buy some back, or where do I want to sell all of it, right? So I'm going to be looking for exit on Bitcoin, looking to sell some of the Amazon position so I can buy more back later. Facebook I'm going to be keeping. Again, I said I'm fully selling the Tsla and Pltr. The Elf Beauty, I might sell a little bit of that after that 20% run up. And Sofi, this hurts me to say because it's my biggest position and I'm the most bullish on it long term. You know, given my experience using all these different financial apps, investment tools, everything, I love what Sofi is doing. I love the user experience. And I feel like people don't know about it yet. And it's not just investors that don't know about it yet. It's everyday people, right? So their brand awareness is still in the single digits. They need to get that way up. And they will. I truly believe they will. I think with the way the election went, Sofi is incredibly well positioned. And I actually think they have quite a competitive advantage. And the only one that could threaten Sofi, in my opinion, would be Robinhood. If Robinhood adopted a lot of what Sofi is doing, that could hurt Sofi, right? And I don't mean doing loans and all of that. I mean if Robinhood acquired a bank, that could hurt Sofi's business a bit. So Sofi really needs to keep the ball rolling, right? But anyway, with Sofi, I really want to look for an exit on that and have a plan where I can be unemotional with it. And it's hard when you're working and you're very, very busy and you can't just jump in and out of something, right? And nobody wants to have a stop buy order in, right? Because there are so many fake breakouts, especially on Sofi, that kind of sucks, right? So if you're gonna do that, if I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna have to have that stop buy set pretty high where I'm gonna be giving up 20 cents on the stock. And it's not a huge deal, right? If I'm really comfortable with my sell target. And so that's what my plan is going to be. I'll sell 50% or I'll cover the position with covered calls, where maybe I'll sell, if I think the stock's going to drop $1, maybe I'll sell at the money calls, or I'll sell in the money calls. Maybe I'll sell a strike price $1 below where we're at and just try to capture that whole premium and hope the stock doesn't get above it, right? Problem with that is then your capital's tied up. So a stock like Sofi, where I love it, I want it to be a core holding, I don't really ever want to sell covered calls that could lead to my shares getting called away, at least not anymore. Not with the way this election went, not with the way Sofi's business is executing. I want to either be in that position or I want to have just sold it, and I want to have my stop buy set, 20 cents above what I think the hard resistance is. And so I'm going to be looking for that sell target on Sofi, right? And it's coming up. The first one's coming up at like 1440 or so. Granted, as the days progress, as price action progresses, that technical analysis changes, that sell target changes, the volume profile changes. So it's a very dynamic thing. And every day I need to be going in with the possible scenarios for my core holdings and going with that plan so I can remain unemotional, right? No, I could also just be hands off. I could just be in what I'm in now and feel very comfortable. I love the way my portfolio is allocated. But we've had a huge run up already, right? And it's not over, but it's time to have a plan for when to sell. And you always need to have that. And it's also time to look, well, what's the next play? Because there's stuff that hasn't popped off yet, and it will, right? There's stuff that maybe has a small or mid-cap market cap that's been beaten down. Earnings were beaten down and haven't turned around yet. And so it's kind of off the radar because it's stuff that isn't too familiar. It's stuff that stands to gain a lot from the economy turning around and interest rates going down. There's opportunities that may not start popping off for 6 months, a year, until their particular earnings start turning around. But that's going to take a little bit of time to turn around, and only then will the herd be jumping in, right? So you always want to be a step ahead of the herd. You don't want to get caught holding the bag. And it's fine to invest with the herd, but you got to have your plan, you got to be unemotional, and you got to be ready to get out, right? Because you don't want to get caught holding something too high, right? Let's use Pltr as an example. Holy crap, have you done the math on that valuation? It's insane. So Pltr has to execute at an incredibly high level just to justify the current price, you know, in a year or two, right? It's incredibly overvalued, and you know, there's a lot of people calling for a $500, $300 to $500 a share Pltr in 9 years, and I hope they get it, right? But that isn't for me. That's not my style. If it disconnects that much from the fundamentals to where I can't do math that justifies it, and it's that excessive, I can't do it, right? Pltr, maybe at $40, I'd take it here. Maybe at $45, I'd get back in. Just given that it's already like 60, I'd feel comfortable getting back in there. But it's time to get out of those names. And it's time to start looking for those little diamonds that have been beaten down, but that their earnings haven't turned around yet. And they haven't turned around yet because, you know, this election result is going to be the thing that turns them around, right? So those are the gems that I'm looking for. If you know of any of those gems, let me know. Let me know what you're doing. Let me know what your thoughts are on Bitcoin. Let me know if you've ever used Sofi for banking or for investing or for a loan, right? In my opinion, Sofi is an excellent investment opportunity, given my experience with things. As long as nobody comes in and gets rid of their competitive advantage, which they do have one, right? As long as nobody comes in and tries to do what Sofi is doing, I see Sofi at $100 a share within 10 years, right? In the next 10 years. And there's math to back that up, right? It's not just whimsical thinking. That is a scenario that's possible. And there's many scenarios, right? And I'm aware of all the scenarios. But given that scenario, given how I feel about the product, how I feel about the company, I'm very bullish on that one in particular. And that's one I won't be selling, right? But everything else I'll feel comfortable getting in and out of with respect to my technical analysis and not looking to always be in, right? Because I don't mind missing the boat on something else. But when it's a stock that I feel that strongly about, I got to be in that, or that's got to be the one I'm looking at. If I've sold it, I'm looking for my reentry. There's one other thing I think is really cool that I want to talk about. The smartwatch, right? I got this thing back in when I was in school so that I could scroll through tickers, flick of the wrist, I can see a stock price, right? So if I'm aware of my scenarios for the day on my big names or my big name that I'm trading, let's say I'm in a leverage position where I've got a lot of money in calls that expire in a month or two or something like that, right? This is very helpful, right? Really alleviates some of the stress because, you know, flick of the wrist, you're going about your day, you see the time, you see the stock price, you see if you need to do something, right? So that's a little tip that might be helpful to some of you if any of you are really active traders. Sorry for the rambling. You know, the election result I think is good for the economy, good for the market. You know, I take good for the world as far as preventing another world war, and I know there's mixed feelings on that, but that's my personal opinion that it is going to be good for world peace. Yeah, that's about it for this one. If there's anything that you're trading that you think I'd be interested in, let me know. You know, if you see Bitcoin going to X, let me know. Let me know what your plans are for these different things. I know there's a group of people I have added on here and on YouTube that I follow that, you know, I know what their plans are. We talk about them all the time. But if you're somebody I don't normally talk to and you've watched this all the way through and you want to weigh in or start sending me your ideas and I'll send you mine, that sounds cool, right? None of this is financial advice. This is all just what I'm doing and what I believe, and I can be wrong, right? I absolutely am wrong all the time, but I'm right more than I'm wrong, right? And that's what matters. And when I keep the emotion out of it and I respect the charts, I could make a really good bet and be right, but I could get out too early, or I could do the math, roll the dice, lose it all because I bet on a lower probability scenario that would have been a home run, right? So, you know, there's all these different scenarios, and it's very important to be aware of that, right? Technical analysis is a thing, it's a valuable thing, but to practice technical analysis in the absence of fundamentals is stupid. I've done it, right? I used to do it and lose money, make money. That was kind of gambling. That's kind of dumb, right? So be familiar with the fundamentals of your company, be familiar with I try to be familiar with the investment calendar too, and then the technical analysis as well. And most importantly, it's dynamic. It's always changing, right? Anyway, you all have a good one. Hope you're making money and positioned well.